Jedzie. Test, test, test.
So we will start with the afternoon session, which always is a challenge in itself, especially when it comes after 2 days that have been very charged and very intense. And as everybody was saying that it has been going very smoothly until now. It jinxed us basically, so I have no chair. I mean, it's our logistical planning, so I stand up. But on the other side, being resilient, it will be okay because I will move a little bit in the room. And so by following me with your regard, I will try to keep you awake, at least in the first 5 minutes, because when the panelists will start, there is no chance that you will not be attentive to what they say. But we are trying to do right now. Basically, for a day and a half, we have been discussing of how we can be more active into policy making, not talking about politics, what our leaders, our politicians should do or should not. Well, they are not very much interested. They have their own agenda. We don't have too much agency. There are no mechanisms that are available to us to participate into politics, except the elections or parliaments or the consultations, which we like, but we think that after 25 years of trying, we need to go a little bit further to continue. We want to be part of the policy making and also on this case of big projects identification. So basically this afternoon, we'll take it easy, relax. So this is why you have tables in front of you, so that you can rest your arms, amongst others. But we will try to, we have brought in consultation with our partners, we have identified two what we call entry points for think tanks and civil society in Southeast Europe 6 that allow us to be present, to contribute, and to have agency in policy making, but also in large infrastructure project management. And those two entry points are the economic and investment plan, and what is closest to it, the Berlin process. And the other entry point is the common regional market. But before this, I would like to introduce the members of the panel. Ms. Castrati, you know her already. She was introduced before. She has she works for the Regional Cooperation Council, and she is a coordinator of the Common Regional Market. So welcome again, from Vera. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Mr. Christian Hagemann, who is from Südosteropa Gesellschaft in Munich, and they have been working since at least last year that I know on gathering input and cooperating with civil society in the Western Balkans, but also in the member states to gather feedback and feed it up to decision makers in Germany. We have Professor Milica Uvaric that is the co-author of a wonderful, great analysis and assessments of the Economic and Investment Plan commissioned by the European Parliament. There are some very interesting examples and analysis on this paper that it will be great to share, and also Ms. Diana Zvetkovic that comes from Bosnia that is implementing right now a very interesting project, which is, I would say, a little bit outside of the box, where, well, from what I've seen, but you'll explain it better, I have the impression that it offers to us something different that gives us more space and also more opportunities to be more active. So correct my presentation during your introduction. Probably I didn't say everything, but this is the first part. They will explain basically what's available as entry point and how we can get into it. And afterwards, we'll have a short exchange to clarify issues. And the novelty of this session is that we have thought that each of the panelists can move into the tables and discuss with you to have a more personalized exchange. Either we can do it afterwards, or we can keep it like this, you know, in this form of the panel. It's up to us to decide. And on our degree of energy around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So without much ado, I would like to ask Professor Loukas to just tell us a little bit of pep talk, why civil societies in the Southeast Europe 6 are able to participate, meaningfully participate in policy making and also make a change.
Thank you, Ardian, and thank you for inviting me to the Tirana Connectivity Forum. I'm very pleased to be here and meet many representatives of the civil society. Some of you I know from before, others I have met only here. And I think it's, in order to answer your question, I think it's worth recalling something that perhaps has not been mentioned sufficiently, that the IPA 3 regulations, as published in October 2021, actually explicitly state the role, the important role in setting priorities of dialogue with the civil society. Of course, you have to get to the annex of this regulation in order to read this article about the important role of dialogue with the civil society, but it's explicitly there. So I think this is the starting point why, in fact, the civil society must be included into dialogue in the preparatory phase and not only later on. Next, I want to say that on the part of the beneficiaries, the countries that are benefiting from these programs, of course, somehow, of course, we can talk about many problems within the public administrations, but actually they are overburdened. If you look at the amount of tasks that has to be handled by the public administration today of the beneficiary countries, it's really impossible, especially considering this economic and investment plan, which is very ambitious. And that's what leads us to the important role of the civil society that really has the knowledge and expertise, precisely because they've been involved in certain issues that have been direct concerns of the citizens. They've been involved in the environment. They have been involved into daily issues that concern the local municipalities. I mean, these are things that unfortunately the public administration does not know and cannot get the right information. There, and not only, but I think that the civil society has better, certainly better communication skills, precisely because they have been involved in dialogue with the citizens regarding issues that that have to do with their safety, food safety, and environmental issues, and of course air pollution, etc., etc. So this is how the civil society is really emerges as a key actor. Now, what I'm going to be saying today is actually based, if I may say a few words about this study that has been mentioned. The European Parliament actually wanted a critical overview of the 10 flagship initiatives, 10 flagship projects that have been included in this newest economic and investment plan. And it has been an extremely challenging exercise because we had about 3 months. They wanted evidence-based analysis. So we had to interview representatives of the EU institutions, of the individual governments, of the civil society, and also of the IFIs. And we did this in a short period of time. And what really emerges is a big problem of governance. You have a big problem of governance. On the one hand, the problem of governance on the part of the beneficiary countries, precisely because you realize that the plan is very ambitious, but it simply cannot be handled by the public administrations. If you compare of what has been written in the economic and investment plan and these flagship initiatives, and you see the projects that have actually been endorsed. Natasha talked about these 79, where is Natasha? She's here somewhere. About these projects, you will see an enormous gap because the list of projects is, of course, long, and what has been endorsed in February 2022 is really a minimum of what should be done. So governance is a big problem, and I think that the importance of the civil society cannot be emphasized more, not only in monitoring what is happening, but from the very beginning, from the preparatory phase, because you cannot have good projects unless you really try to involve your expertise from your societies. And of course, some of these organizations have been long present, trying to actually respond to citizens' problems and so on. I think that there is this problem of governance within the public administration, but there is also another problem of governance, which has to do with the donors. If you look at how the Western Balkan investment framework has been functioning, despite the fact that there have been novelties, they're trying to improve it because it's been very much criticized in the past. You see that there, of course, the donors will finance what they think is important, but somehow also there you see a number of deficiencies. We heard yesterday from Matteo Rivellini from the European Investment Bank that the EIB is no longer going to finance gas projects. But if you compare that with the list of endorsed projects in February 2022, you will see that the majority of the projects that have been submitted by the Western Balkan governments are actually gas pipelines. So who is going to finance these gas pipelines if the main institution, the EIB, is no longer going to finance gas projects? So there is a gap. There is a need to really involve experts in certain areas, energy, environment. Infrastructure may be a minor problem, precisely because infrastructure as a priority has been present in the Western Balkan region from the very, very beginning. I was actually in Tirana in May 2001. There was the first big conference of the Working Table 2 of the Stability Pact for Southeastern Europe. And in fact, it was the infrastructure projects which were being prepared then, feasibility studies and so on. And so somehow it's disappointing to see that more than 20 years later, the connections are not so good as we might have hoped. And so anyway, the big problem are the flagships that have to do with energy, with renewable energy, with decarbonization, with climate change, because these are topics which have really come to the fore, not only in the Western Balkans, but all throughout the European Union. These are very important issues, and these are actually intersectoral priorities that we have to think about immediately in order to be able to find some strategies. And I think that the Western Balkans are unfortunately at the very beginning of this green transition. So I will stop here.
Just a second.
Uh-huh.
In your paper, he mentioned that there is IPA 3 foresees an important role for civil society to participate in there. But if I remember well, the flagship project identification and preparation is not in the focus of IPA consultation with civil society of IPA 3. So basically, the phase that you just mentioned is not foreseen. We must be consulted more, but once after the thing is done, you know. So I mean, this is a big problem. You also underlined governance,
it's a big problem because if the projects are not well governed, their impact will not be relevant, the efficiency will be lower. And also you mentioned always about the good governance, the lack of administrative capacity, quoting always bureaucratic resistance and weak political commitment. So, I mean, has IPA 3, according to your study, been able to propose some relevant, let's say, remedies to deal with it?
Well, unfortunately not. I don't think that IPA 3 has really brought, despite all the novelties that have been brought in, it's not that it has contributed to an improvement of the whole process. And this we can in fact see by looking at the projects that have been endorsed so far. I personally, I think that there is a big need to decentralize the IPA 3 program, because now it's really based on a methodology where the beneficiaries are the 6 Western Balkan countries. But how do you reach local communities? How do you finance something that is important in a local community where there is, especially there is lack of knowledge and lack of expertise to prepare good projects. I mean, it cannot be in the hands of an official working in the ministry.
Absolutely. And quoting you again, you use the term WBIF distortion. Well, here we are not talking about IPA 3, we are talking about WBIF, but WBIF will be the structure from which 30 billion euros will go through to come to the Western Balkans. So you mentioned WBIF distortion from the beneficiaries, but I also would add also to distortion in the favor of international financial institutions as well. I mean, who protects the citizen at the WBIF? Who represents the citizen?
In fact, one of the conclusions and recommendations of the study we did for the European Parliament is to enable some sort of representation of the civil society in the Western Balkan investment framework, precisely because somehow they have not been present at all. And it's one of the recommendations of our study, not only, but we have recommended that the European Parliament has a more active role, because now, as you know,
political oversight, to keep the political oversight over the funds.
Exactly, to keep an oversight over how the money is being allocated, how the money is being spent, and so on, because it's all, of course, the European Parliament is an institution that needs to be much more involved. It's not by chance that they actually commissioned this critical review of the economic and investment plan. So both of the European Parliament and also on the part of civil society, why not have representatives of the major regional civil society organizations or also national? I think it would be an excellent way to secure more say by the civil society, by the citizens of the region.
It's an excellent question that many of us here in this room are asking, because to our best understanding, civil society representatives were the only ones to send a year ago, after the Western Balkan Summit, an official request, an open letter to the EU instances asking them to leave us a place as observer at WBIF. Everybody got it, even Chamber Investment Forum got it, but we didn't. So that's very interesting to see. I will stop with you right now, but there are some other, you have pointed out some very excellent examples from the transport, flagship 1, 2, 3, and also energy, flagship 4, 5, and 6. In which you point out, well, basically you illustrate that we know what we're talking about, but we will come to it later on during the debate.
Okay, some illustrations, fine.
Christian, you have been involved with the Western Balkan Summit of the civil society and think tanks last year, and also this year, working closely with German authorities. And as Professor Tsoukalis, and today it was said that, I mean, if Germany and France, they don't agree with each other, well, they have to agree with each other to push things forward. One thing that I've noticed last year is that you put a lot of attention not only to having a smooth consultation process and feedback gathering from civil society organizations and think tanks, but also to put us in contact with German policymakers. Well, you also are working on the Berlin Process 2.0. We estimate it is a great entry point for us. Civil society consultations, civil society summits are in its DNA. But does Berlin Process 2.0 offer for us? And what are you doing it to make it happen? Because you're on our side.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, Adrian. I'm really happy to be here today and also to be able to participate physically finally in this forum after last year was only possible online. So I'm working at the Southeast Europe Association. We are the network of any kind of specialists on the region in Germany, and we do a lot of conferences and workshops. And this year, together with the Aspen Institute, Germany in Berlin, we are proud to be hosting the Civil Society Forum of the Berlin Process. And last year, many people were wondering about the Berlin Process because they said, okay, what is going to happen next year? Because it's going to be the first Berlin Process in the post-Merkel era. And now, after what has happened on 24th February, I haven't heard this from anyone again since then, I must say, because we are in a fundamentally different situation now. And we've seen since last year an attack, since February of this year, in comparison to last year, an attack on the European post-Cold War security order. And we have to deal with it. And it has already been mentioned a couple of times at this conference. And I would say that in dealing with it, it makes probably sense from my point of view to think of two different ways. And the one is to look at things that should be conceived of fundamentally differently of how we have been doing them in the past. And if I take the German example, this is surely energy policy, where we are seeing a turnaround, but also defense spending, which we have revamped a lot and which is a fundamentally different approach. The second category, I would say, are things where we have been on the right track already in the past, but where we have to become much more successful now, because at least I hope so, that everybody has understood that they matter very much. And this is surely European integration. This is the enlargement process, but also the green agenda and everything related to the Berlin process. So I think it's a very good sign that the Berlin process continues this year, that Germany is hosting it, and that we're going to have a civil society forum again. And our goal, together with our partners from the Aspen Institute, is to offer for Western Balkan society, so for you, a platform where you can have a meaningful basis to discuss policies and to bring them into the policy process, to discuss them with decision makers, with officials, and to make them heard. So we see ourselves rather as service providers in this regard to you. So in order to make this happen, we have conceived of this as a three-step process. And you will realize, if you've listened closely to Marta before, that we're not reinventing the wheel, because it makes sense to have some things in a way that they are. And the idea is that we will start with an online preparatory workshop on 19th and 20th October. And the idea is here to focus in working groups on issues that are relevant for the Western Balkans summit afterwards, but also go beyond this. So these are going to be issues connected to the green agenda, energy transition, climate change, and also sustainable development of the economy. We would like to propose talking about disinformation and the problems related to it, EU integration in a changing geopolitical environment, and also CSO involvement in infrastructure projects, which is a working group that is probably interesting to many people who are present here today. And the idea is that we have rapporteurs from the Western Balkan civil society organizations who are in charge of the working groups, who take the role of organizing and moderating these groups. And this is very important, of course, on the one hand, because we don't have all this expertise that you guys have. And at the same time, it also matters a lot for ownership, because we as German civil society cannot really say these are the topics you should talk about, and these are the recommendations you should have. It has to come from the region, which is clear anyway. And the idea is that these rapporteur organizations in the end sum up the recommendations and bring them in at the conference that will take in Berlin right before the summit, so on 1st and 2nd November. And to be able there in the first step, bringing them closer to the policy process, to discuss them with officials and with policymakers, and giving a floor to these recommendations, demands, and proposals. And as Adrian already mentioned, as we did it in the last year, we're trying to revamp this a bit. Last year, we made some good experiences with a post-summit phase. So to organize bilateral online meetings with certain officials from ministries and selected members of working groups who are relevant in this policy area, to give them another possibility to discuss the recommendations. So in a way, the people perceived this as a service, and also as it was characterized here often, that civil society has a capacity here to explain things, to outline what is happening in certain policy sectors, and the ministries benefit from it. And at least from our perspective, this was adopted very well last year, and we hope to continue this with a broader approach this year. So I think in the end, we hope to have a fruitful process, to continue working on a lot of subjects, and to also assess what has changed since last year, because I think that the changing geopolitical circumstances is an issue that will characterize all kinds of discussions. So we also decided that there's not going to be just a discussion focused only on this aspect. And if I may underline as a last point, for me, the reason being here is basically the first, so besides to listening all the excellent presentations that we've had already, is that I hope that I can interest you into participating in the preparatory workshop end of October. And if you're interested, just contact me, write me an email or approach me, and we will put you on the list. And the second is that I'm really interested in learning from you what we could further add to this. I've heard many ideas. Civil society can be part of the preparatory phase. Civil society is seen as a kind of capacity for the governments of the region, which is a huge debate, the debate of capacity, being involved at the local level. So I'm really looking forward to further ideas from your side. And to be honest, we've been approached with this on a very short notice. So it's still possible to include some ideas at this point, if they're feasible. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. So I'll stop just here for just 2 or 3 minutes. It was not foreseen. Is everything clear with what Milica and what Christian said? Do you have any question that just pops into your mind and you cannot hold until the floor is open for question and answers? I have at least 4. Right? So basically, there is a wonderful paper which I strongly recommend you to read about the economic and investment plan and its 10 flagships. It's online.
It's online. It's on the web of the European Parliament.
Yes.
And my co-authors are Matteo Bonomi and Will Barton. So it's the 3 of us that have written this critical review of the flagships.
And by reading it, not only we understand better what the economic and investment plan and the flagships are, but we understand perfectly well what are their problems and how we can contribute in dealing with them. This helps us structure also our input, our intended input, if we are interested in first, and how we can participate second. And also, if I can, if I continue with what Christian said, is that there is a new, I would say, it's not an avenue for the moment, but it's a new road that is being opened, where think tanks and civil society actors from the region can be much more active and can go, let's say, side by side with the normal way of contributing to the mechanisms that IPA 3 has made available. It's here, is asking for contribution. If we have any idea, any question, we can start from now on, right? So just assuming the first 2 interventions, and the best part comes right now, because it's not every day. that we guys are in a position when we can play the competition between two service demanders, because Christian is demanding our help and Pranver also is demanding our contribution. So basically, but it's the same thing, because for us, for Cooperation and Development Institute, Common Regional Market and the Berlin process are very much in harmony with each other. They cannot work without each other. So and this is why we have identified them as a very interesting and fruitful way of exploring. Pranver is regional Common Regional Market coordinator since
April, but working in RCC from 2017, so knowing quite a bit of previous CRM, which was Regional Economic Area, and the current CRM. So,
and without going into any competitive initiatives or alternative ones, we would be very happy and very interested to learn, first of all, what is CRM in 2 words, because maybe not everybody here knows everything about CRM, and how we can be of use.
thank you very much. Indeed, I think that the mixture of the panelists from different spectrum brings a completely different perspective to the discussion. And me being representing the Regional Cooperation Council, which is an intergovernmental organization based in Sarajevo and works for 13 participants, but that goes beyond the Western Balkans and has a political mandate to do that. But at the same time, works very focused on the regional cooperation, trying to bring the Western Balkan economies closer to one to the other, but at the same time, trying to contribute through the regional cooperation for a, let's say, faster and smoother EU integration process for the economies. And Berlin process, as was already said, for us, the Berlin process is from the genesis, from when it started, tried to build and try to highlight the importance of all our economies to get together and work together and find the power of togetherness, meaning that all bit by bit and piece by piece, we can together complement the puzzle and become stronger while progressing and advancing. And the annual survey that the RCC conducts, which is the Balkan Barometer, that tries to get the perception of 6,000 citizens from the Western Balkans and 1,200 businesses from the whole region, already shows us that this region is still very strong, believing that the regional cooperation helps them to progress further and to improve their lives. And this is why, as part of the common regional market, which is, let's say, the political goal and vision of the Western Balkans towards an enhanced regional market, as a stepping stone to the EU integration process. And it covers, it's based on the 4 freedoms that are also the 4 freedoms of EU, but is further strengthened with different areas like regional digital area, regional innovation area, industrial area. And the complexity of measures within the common regional market makes it to a certain extent very challenging and demanding to monitor and to implement and support the overall cohesion of all the actors while implementing the measures. And I have to say that if you go through the CRM, I mean the acronyms we use for it, if you go through it, it seems like it is a bureaucratic document, a formal document with a lot of measures and actions.
It is a bureaucratic document.
No, I would say that it's not just a bureaucratic document, but is an inclusive process in which many actors at different levels are trying to contribute and implement what is at their realm of responsibilities. And the whole CRM governance structure encompasses from the political level to the lowest level in the public administration, civil servants in the implementation process. And the hierarchy of it, although it seems bureaucratic, it is at the same time contributing to an inclusive process of different layers of responsibility.
Sorry, if I can interrupt you, can you give us an example, something that we can understand, we can use, we can touch of the CRM? Just an example.
Example of a measure or example
Achievement.
of the governance?
Achievement.
Okay. Let me then say the the most well-known, I guess. It's first the green lane and second the roaming agreement. We all know that green lanes were one of the biggest achievements that came as a response to the COVID, in which we immediately started to see what the EU was doing, and we managed within the Western Balkans to have the green lane that made possible for the Western Balkans to have free flow of goods during the pandemic. And now that is extended further. It's going between the Western Balkan and EU, which is another way of seeing the integration into the EU. And the roaming agreement, I guess that everyone here in this room from the Western Balkans, not from EU, unfortunately, not yet, enjoys the roaming free from 1st July 21, in which you can talk as you are home, you can surf in the internet as you're home, and this is already an achievement that the common regional market and the process, this hierarchy and its governance brought. But let me just bring another element for which I think the panel also deserves to elaborate further and more. When we developed the common regional market, we also understanding the need to have third opinions, not only the opinions from the governments and from the public institutions. We made an online public consultation of the CRM. I have to say that regrettably, we received very limited inputs, either very general ones or from very, let's say, few institutions outside the government. This is not a criticism, but this is also a call how to make this work better and how to improve it. And what would be the best approach that we all can think of it to make the CRM and to make the regional cooperation in Berlin process, also these elements flow one to the other, and how to structure the input the civil society can bring to the politicians. I think that the word civil society, although it is, let's say, it's very broad, and one may think that while you involve and engage them all, you get a structured input to the processes of the policy making. I think that if the civil society itself can make it, or let's say can in a way structure the discussion in a way that it fits into the policy agenda, I think that would be the best benefit for the whole discussion. Again, this is not a criticism. I'm not saying that you are not doing it, but perhaps if we go, and that is also a message that I try to also, let's say, share with you in the panel for the green agenda, specialized contribution within the policymaking are the ones who make the difference. And given that this whole agenda of the common regional market encompasses from investment, financial market, free movement of people, digital innovation, industry, women economic empowerment, I mean, trade, I guess that you all understand that no matter how much we try to bring added value into the discussion, unless we have specialized and topical discussion on specific agendas, we can be, let's say, we can build further and we can make the difference.
If I may interrupt just a second, just to reinforce this point of feeding the agenda, it's a point that was raised by Monsieur Gilles Kittel, fitting with the agenda, also by Mr. Peter Girk, and also by you. It seems that all the policymakers and also, yes, Martha, our friend Martha, also policymakers and people that work with policymakers, they have, I mean, it's very important for them to fit with the policy agenda. But I mean, here I would like to come back to what you mentioned, need for third opinions. And your answer was not very satisfactory because they were few and they were of poor quality.
Very general. Yeah, please.
We are like all working on the right problem. Yeah, because we are Marta Szpala Center for Business Studies. We are all working here, like monitoring the achievement of the Berlin process? And can I ask when the consultation took place and how do you contact the civil society? Because me personally, I have no idea that the consultation took place. And truly speaking, since we prepared some paper about the common regional market, I don't know anybody who knew about the consultation. So my
Okay.
question is about the
Okay.
how do you contact the civil society?
So this
Oh.
was, thank you very much, Marta.
Okay.
Coming
Thank
to the few, I just did a 3. So first of all, few replies, a problem of communication. Marta just illustrated my point. And maybe the people are not interested in this agenda. So it comes again to communication because they must be interested. And the second one is poor quality, which means knowledge. It was mentioned before as well, the knowledge of the CSOs, and also the absence of data. I will also add a point, and I will raise it for you, keep it for discussions afterwards. Do you realize how much it costs in time to read a policy paper, to research it, and to prepare a feedback?
Okay, let me start with an answer. I'm sorry if what I said sounded like a criticism, but I think, and that was not meant to be a criticism. However, I wanted to say that there is something that we need to do for this mechanism to work better. Now, to respond to your question, Common Regional Market Action Plan was prepared during 2020. I understood. I just wanted to put the whole answer in the context. So it was prepared during intensive months of the pandemic in 2020, and it was adopted in November 2020 in Sofia. And of course, the only way we had while we were in the middle of the pandemic was to have and I said this, open public online consultation. So we announced that the current draft of the action plan was at the Regional Cooperation Council website. And we tried to share this information within our networks and through the social media. I understand that perhaps this outreach was not enough and it might also be the answer why we had limited inputs or very general ones, or time was not enough. So again, my point, why I'm saying this is that my point to that is that there is something that could be done from both sides to make this cooperation work better. I also understand that it requires a lot of time. You need data to make a proper assessment of what a policy paper, what a document that is prepared by governments or by regional partners for you to provide meaningful and evidence-based comments to it. But sometimes this is also a matter of capacities and possibilities. You have to postpone at large and to give, let's say, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months time for, let's say, checking a policy reform or a policy measure. And given things are changing very fast, and sometimes you are required to have inputs in a short period of time, this also brings to the concern that with whom we communicated. So we opened it to everyone, like we usually do, I think, in all economies when you have open public consultation for laws. So you make it available, and then you hope to get inputs. If there is something to improve, of course, we are all here together as part of the same, because I heard Adrian saying, our part, your part. I think that we are all the same part, because we are all together trying to make the change and make it better for our citizens in the region. So I wouldn't go into parts, who is who, we and you. I mean, I think we are all together in this.
Thank you very much, Pranvera. Just 2 comments. First of all, we need always somebody to be against with, you know. It kind of reinforces our determination. In this case, it's not Pranvera. Pranvera is our friend. And this is why we are kind of the closest that we can have to a friend. But okay, let's keep, this is why we are saying all those things to you, but keep everything that has to do with political will for the evening debate, because over there now we are at the policy making level, at the regional level, which, as you know, it's not very easy. but we will have the opportunity to bring all our concerns to the political level this evening at 7 o'clock. So basically, I think that we have an idea more or less what the Berlin Process 2.0 involves, what common regional market offers to us, and how we can work in a partnership, why we're good to deal with both of them from a project point of view. And now we have the opportunity to discuss or to hear about an initiative which I think is very recent, which is not supported by the EU, which is very interesting, and maybe that will provide an alternative or complementary point of view or approach to the participatory role of civil society and think tanks into policymaking. Diana.
Thank you. Actually, this was a great entry point for me because we emphasized maybe 3 key points. First one is that we have a lack of capacities in the civil society sector in the Western Balkan region. And I think that all day we talked about that. We have a lack of capacities, but at the same time, we have a lack of resources, human resources, but at the same time, we have a lack of financial resources, especially in countries like Montenegro or Kosovo. So we don't have equal capacities. Second point is that somehow we are on the same side, but we are not equal. We are waiting to be invited in some process. And that means for us in civil society sector that we are not at the same level because we are constantly waiting and asking to be equal partner from the beginning. For example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are asking just 2 things from EU delegation and from international community. Please involve civil society sector in whole processes that you are doing with the government. And guess what? In Bosnia and Herzegovina, we have 2 main processes, like a new law on electoral law, and the second thing is constitution. And international community actually moved whole process from institutional level to some restaurants, and they are discussing with the political parties about extremely important processes without civil society sector, without even government, some part of the government or opposition. And we're just asking to be involved or just informed. And that is the reason why I believe that we are not in the same position. And I will try to bring that new energy and opportunity to all civil society organizations from the Western Balkan region to be equal in a communication, equal in participation. And also we need to provide concrete support for civil society in terms of resources in order to build their internal capacities in civil society sector, but also to work on a mechanism between civil society sector and government, and between civil society sector in the region, because we are much more stronger if we are working together.
Diana, okay, we all agree on this. Is there anybody that disagrees with that?
No.
No, and we have been trying this for the last 25 years without success. Why your project is different?
I believe that our project Smart Balkan is different because we have a support from Kingdom of Norway, and they actually believe that the civil society sector in Western Balkan region have enough capacities, have enough ideas and resources to bring something new by using own capacities. We're trying to have a local ownership under the processes, and at the same time, we are a project, but we will support civil society sector in accordance with their mission and vision. And we are trying to stop this harmful framework or donor framework in the Western Balkan region that is completely or totally oriented to the projects or to the mission of the other countries or of the EU or other international communities, we would like to use capacities and also to be able to respond on the specific needs of local organizations and local people.
Very
We
good.
are like mediation between citizens and government, and we have that position to collect everything on a local level.
Excellent. So some questions that probably are burning the lips of everybody here. How much money do we have available to spend on us?
70 million euros.
17 or 70? 17 or 70?
17.
17 million euros. Whoa, it's not little. Okay.
No, actually, that is the hugest project. And yeah, that's true.
You need the mic, mate.
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, I was also surprised because,
I was flabbergasted to hear 17 million euro. That's an awful lot of money.
This is cohesion funds. This is cohesion funds.
I'll sit on your table after this. Yeah, that's really interesting because they believe in a local ownership.
Right, 17 million euros, but they are always in your organization bank account. I suppose that they are at Norwegian bank account. I mean, where is this money? It's a commitment, or they? I mean, basically, okay. Who decides about how this money will be distributed?
A consortium consisted of 3 local civil
No, I
society.
mean it's not. But I mean, it will be decided in the Balkans. I mean, already decided in Norway, in whatever their capital is called.
In 6 countries in Western
In the Western Balkans, which excellent news. So I guess you have plenty of questions now. But
and we will completely exclude people from other countries because we need to have whole process on a local level. We will use local knowledge, local people, everything on a local level.
Excellent, odlično.
And that's somehow the contribution to the local economies also.
Fantastic. So Milica, I'm coming back to you as I promised before. You know why? Because I think that the moment has come to tell us what you have found with the flagships in transport and in energy, things that do not work, that can eventually enter into the scope of action that Diana may be interested to support.
Thank you. Well, there are many concrete examples of very poor governance, unfortunately. In fact, if you look at the end of this study for the European Parliament, the #1 challenge is governance, precisely because you have problems everywhere. You have problems because you have to deal with intra-sectoral issues. If you think of climate change or energy, you have to really implement it in all your ministries and so on. But let me give you some examples of poor governance that in the case of the first 3 flagships, which are dedicated to the transport infrastructure, the first problem is that very frequently EU standards and technical norms are simply not being used in the preparation of the project. So if at the end of the day you do have so-called mature projects, because the EU is only going to finance mature projects, what is the sense if you did not apply concrete norms that have become obligatory today in the European Union? Concretely, also environmental impact. You have to, for every project today in the European Union member states, you need to have an environmental impact, and this is simply not done. And of course, it's a very tough task to have an impact of environmental impact of these projects. So this is one problem. The other problem are the procurement procedures. We very well know that there is not sufficient transparency in the procurement procedures in, I would say, most countries. And this is a big problem because, of course, if on the side of the EU is trying to impose, of course, the standards that we have known for many years, but then you have a Chinese investor who arrives and who does not of course, is being awarded a project despite all the important norms. Of course, this is another very important issue. And then if you look at the various flagships, and this is the third thing I want to emphasize regarding the transport infrastructure projects, there's really an inconsistency between them, because on the one hand, you give a huge subsidized you give a huge subsidy for certain transport co-financing on the part of the EU, but this is sometimes in conflict with the environmental norms. I mean, if you look at projects for transport, the green agenda actually wants to facilitate the shift from road to railways and waterway modes of transport, but somehow this is not at all sufficiently emphasized. Let me just pass quickly to the poor governance regarding the next flagships, which have to do with renewable energy, decarbonization, renovation wave. Now here, I was struck to read actually that in the initial package, there was only one project on wind and solar energy. Everything else was on hydropower. And somehow in the individual countries, there have been a lot of incentives for small hydropower plants, which have proved to be a disaster, if I may say, for environmental concerns, because they very frequently the environmental impact has not been taken into account, and not by chance. In fact, there are quite a few donors that have withdrawn their financing in this area. Not only, but the flagships do not address the issue of energy security in view of rising energy prices and so on. If we look at the flagship 5, transition from coal, now 4 of the 5 projects initially proposed were on gas pipelines. I've already mentioned this. So how are you to implement a green transition towards renewable resources if 5 of your 6 proposed projects are on gas pipelines? And this is really contradictory also with the policies of the IFIs. We've heard this, and not only, but if you look at how much there could be potentially energy from solar and wind energy, I think there's a huge potential that has not been taken into account. And there, of course, it's the civil society organizations that know much more about these issues than the public administration of the beneficiaries.
And we want to do it. We are convinced we have the money to do it, if I understand it well. And now we have a door on which to knock, because if I understood well, Christian, you will have a group on energy in your Western Balkans summit, right? She has the conclusions, more or less, at least a draft to discuss.
Well.
So perfect. Maybe Pranvera, no, some completion, and afterwards Christian, and afterwards we open the floor. We'll not do this kind of individual, or we can do it, but yes, first yours.
What I want to add, and also after listening these figures, and these messages, which of course are red flags for the governments, but not only, because this is at the same time a signal to everyone who should contribute for a better governance of how, not only how the EU funds are used, but how these funds that are used are in a way creating the impact we all desire to have in our societies and in our economies. But given that I'm very much into the CRM part, and until now we have not had, let's say, as I flagged already, prominently the CSOs part of the discussions or prominently engaged, despite many efforts we have invested to have to organize conference where we tend to bring together policymakers, governments from the region, and also representatives from the civil society. But of course, this is not an inclusive or everyone is represented there. And this is why we see this, for us, this is an obstacle. So if you work in a regional organization, or if you are somewhere in commission city and you want to communicate a contact to someone to bring the added value to your policies, the first question you have is whom I contact, with whom I'm in connection with, who is the most representative for the agenda I'm leading, or I want to get to have the contribution. And this is a question that, to be honest, I've never found the answer right. Maybe it is me that I cannot find it right, but maybe it's also because the civil society is very large and actors are numerous. So I think what I see that we need is to establish, at least for the common regional market, so for this also new Berlin process, an alliance between the governments and the civil society on how to bring the policy making into a tangible process in which everyone can fairly and equally contribute. I understand that even within the civil society, not everyone is equal. So it's not only from the government and civil society or other stakeholders, but even within the same network, not everyone is equal on knowledge, on expertise, on capacities, on many things. So my question to all of us, me included, but until now I failed to give an answer to myself, is how can this be achieved? What would be the right path to have the civil society more into the policy making and into the regional initiatives?
Perfect.
What are we doing wrong in case we are doing it wrong or we are not doing it sufficiently?
This is the perfect transition, but without your last question, because here in the in the 8th edition of the CDI, we are not looking at the wrong things. We are looking at the best cases to share. So we like being positive. So basically, just a question. I mean, I think that unless Christian, you have something to add to in this line before we pass the.
Maybe just to summarize briefly before we enter into discussion. Thank you very much for this input, and I think I'm going to contact all three of you after the conference for inputs to our meeting, because I think what we thought of before was probably we can have a discussion on regional cooperation and how you can organize, like also with best practice examples, cooperation among NGOs, and I think we should have this also now on local capacity building probably, and maybe we can speak about this, Diana. And I like your conclusion now. I already wrote it down before after this short discussion. This question of creating a tangible process that you said now to include everyone, or basically looking for the channels how to approach the CSO knowledge, because apparently it's still very difficult to do this, and maybe also to gather some ideas from civil society how they can be most easily approached. And finally, what I took from you, Milica, this point that people should learn about the regulations and what IPA 3 actually offers to them. And maybe this could also be a small presentation to say, okay, it's here, there are rules. And usually, at least I would hope for, nothing is stronger than formal rules that say you have to be included in this. So you have a seat at the table. And yeah.
So now Pranvera just asked us, what should we do as so okay, so what we should all do to know better each other and to contribute to each other work. So floor is open. Let's take a first round of question. Frank, it's on the line. Second, third. Okay, let's take the first two questions. Frank. Short and to the point.
Yep. So I'm Frank Handke, former country leader of Friedrich Ebert Foundation in Albania, Macedonia, and Kosovo. Might be I haven't slept well, but I want to provoke a bit. When we look to the history of civil society, we have to admit that mostly civil society was more successful when it was a movement. So the green idea came from movements, not only from academic knowledge. So what I mean is we cannot only work with the head, we also need movement to include more people from civil society. When we are talking about civil society, to be frankly, we are talking about 90% academics, at least in the region. It is an academic civil society, which was not always built from the bottom to the top, but the other way around. Because here, the civil society, more or less, as I said, a bit provocative, is fed by foreign money. It is not grown from the bottom. And this is a problem. So it's a part of the answer, how to become more successful. I think we need also, beside the knowledge we have in the civil society, without any question, we need movement. We need more public activities, and we will include more people from civil society. Secondly, what I'm missing is a bit, everybody is talking about participation. Participation is nice, but civil society should have focus on certain points. So Milica said, of course, energy, of course, green energy. So we saw that in green energy, the civil society all over Europe was successful. Otherwise, we wouldn't discuss what we are discussing today, yeah, in politics. And we could see that everywhere where we had movement, politicians listened. So we have to be aware, last sentence, sorry, we have to be aware that they don't want to talk with us. So we have to knock on the door a bit louder. This means
Frank,
we need movement.
Frank,
Sorry
we have destroyed, there is no more doors in our countries, you know, for example.
Then the walls.
Nobody cares. I mean, we have been voting for the last 25 years. We have the same people on top, you know, we vote right, left, and center. We'll still have the same.
But
let me finish.
The civil society is not supported by the normal
yes,
people.
But it is not. It is not. Can you please take the microphone off? No, the reason why I'm saying this is that you are absolutely right. You're absolutely, without movement, we cannot do anything. Without legitimacy, you say movement, I say people's legitimacy. But this is not the debate tonight. Tonight we are not into politics. Tonight we are into policy making. And into policy making, we have to fit into the agenda. It's a very restrained thing. It's a very restrained debate that we are having this evening. It's not into politics. It's not into legitimacy. We are, and I will finish with this. Who amongst this has a membership based on, has an organization based in membership? If you can raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Partially. So 3 among, not even 10%, right? So it's a moot. It's very valid, but it's moot.
Okay, hi, Marko Troshanovsky again, Institute for Democracy. I have a question for Pranvera. Open Balkan, it's inevitable question. We have to discuss it. I mean, it's quite big room. We have space for the elephant. So we must discuss what are the advantages and disadvantages. Do these two ideas overlap? What do we get? So what's your opinion on that? In terms of efficient policy making and inclusion of the civil society, try creating a roster on specific processes that common regional markets started, then recruit interested specialized think tanks and update your database with people that have invested interest and knowledge so you can get substantial feedback. And of course, if possible, create a predictable policy calendar so that we can know which process, which discussion comes when, and we can promptly prepare to provide substantial feedback. This is essential because it takes time always to get good advice, of course. With regard to Christian, my question would be, do you have any evaluation output from the previous Berlin process summits? with regard to the inclusion of the civil society in the policy making dialogue. What were the effects? What are the lessons learned, and how this new 2.0 summit of the Berlin process can be substantially improved in terms of architecture, in terms of conceptual design, on how to actually communicate truly and substantially with the policy makers, because we are everybody have a big expectation from this Berlin process, because it's been quite some time that after the failure of the Bulgarian Macedonian co-chairmanship with the process, things are in a vague non-gravity situation, so to say. So we have to move things forward, and in order for us and to be motivated to contribute, we need a motivation that somebody listens to the ideas we provide. So do you have any evaluation reports on the success of the current structure of the Berlin process in that regard? Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I think the first one is for me. Well, Open Balkan is, let's say, reality, something that three economies from the Western Balkans have come together and are working on given agendas, which indeed are building on the same principles, but one of the common regional market, meaning builds on the four freedoms, and tries to make the linkages of the four freedoms among different agendas, but they don't have the all-inclusiveness principle that the common regional market itself brings. So we in RCC, and me personally, we see these as complementary one to the other. This is not a matter of competition, who is doing what, but building on what can be best to improve certain policies at each of the economies. We also have started in RCC, while understanding the needs to make all the economies come together at the same level, we have started to provide tailor-made support for specific economies on a given agenda, so that the level of development can equalize. In other words, if any of the economies advances through different initiatives, we see this as complementary to what we do for the common regional market, given let's say the objective or the ultimate goal is to improve the life of the citizens in this region. So I would say that many of the agendas or many of the advancements in either of the agendas are very complementary. In some cases, one moves faster, in another, the other initiative moves faster, but for us, this is not a competition, this is a complementarity. And I think that the added value and the power of all we do is try to complement what we have to do in the real life. And by bringing into this the civil society as well, and how this policy making in a way could be improved, I wanted to also, building on what you said, but also on the community point raised. I think that whatever we get at any form we get is from the elite of the civil society in all of the economies, but I don't think that this is something that is only in the Western Balkans. And usually is the civil society, which is very active at the capitals. What about small cities, regions throughout the region? There are CSOs there, I guess, for sure. Of course, not with the same knowledge and expertise as the ones in the capital, but they could bring the voice and the pulse of the community. So I think there is a niche here that needs to be thought through. Again, I don't have the answer. I'm not an expert in the civil society, so I don't know how this could be improved, but I think that this is something that should be thought through. Otherwise, we'll have everyone working and contributing within its own bubble without making the bubbles communicating one to the other.
Madam Castrati, Ardian had to go for a short while and he delegated the moderation to me. I guess because he looked around and saw the oldest person in the room and said, "You're going to."
Okay, I thought I did something wrong. So
No. Sorry.
You are not the oldest.
We do a competition afterwards, okay? I think that we have gone into a lot of details about bubbles and so on. I think that at least I would join Georgia with a question about the political meaningfulness of open society, of another in the regional initiative at the moment when we have about 75 regional initiatives happening at this moment. Yes, so I'd like to, if I may drop in with this question, ask, for instance, Milica, what do you say about the proliferation of initiatives? Open Balkans, Berlin process, now we are going to have the political union. Previously, we had the Southeast European process, and so on and so on. Is this all a replacement, to use a phrase from Frank, for real movement in the enlargement process?
Well, I have to say that if we consider specifically, I'll not go into specifically what is now going on with respect to the Western Balkans. Of course, it's very confusing sometimes because if you read all the documents, you read the economic and investment plan, and there you have a lot about the common market, and of course these are some objectives that have been there for quite a long time, etc. Then you arrive to the flagship projects, which actually do not deal with all the objectives of the CRM. Then you read the instructions for implementing the green agenda, and there you have a different order of priorities. And so if I was somebody working on these issues, I would myself ask, where do I start from? It's really it's become very complicated and very confusing, and I really, we interviewed quite a lot of stakeholders for this study for the European Parliament, and of course, everybody who works on a specific issue thinks that is the most important of all. But of course, somehow the whole strategy is still not, at least in my view, is not clear enough, and perhaps the Berlin process too will try and put these bits and pieces together. And of course, now going beyond the EU initiatives, you have, of course, the Open Balkan initiative, which of course does not include all the countries. It's been criticized precisely because it introduces a new division of the region. And in a way, the Open Balkan initiative is really drawing on what the Regional Cooperation Council has achieved so far. So it's a political game, and I don't want to go into that, but actually what they're emphasizing are things that the Regional Cooperation Council has been doing all these years for political reasons. And
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes, I saw it. This gentleman over there. He got the mic.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Vlada. I'm coming from Belgrade Open Schools. So this is a Serbian-based NGO. And I just would like to spice this a little bit because it really has, this is so much complex, and I'm hearing all of this you're saying. I'm going to get out of this panel more confused than I entered in. But just let me, there is one point that we are missing. We are talking here about interconnectivity, and we should take into account to what extent the citizens, ordinary citizens, see civil society as their interlocutor towards policy development process. Very short example. My organization did the research back in Serbia about to what extent the ordinary citizens feel attached to the civil society interventions. So the results are not good. In Serbia, we don't have a long-term researches that show the level of trust of citizens to the civil society organizations. The rare research show, for example, that 2 out of 10 citizens believe that civil society can advocate for their interest in the policy development process. And we are all living in the region of the rather declined democracy. So I'm again coming back to Serbian example. How does the policy development process works when the civil society is engaged? You have a rather favorable environment for engaging with civil society. So I can test this because I was a part of the intergovernmental groups which enacted this strategy, this law, whatsoever. But the moment you start neglecting the role of the civil society in decision-making process, and this happens often in Serbia, when you go back and get people on the streets, you are much more effective in your policy development impacts. So my opinion is in the region of the declining democracy, civil society as a partner in the policy development process should be backed up with the citizens, you know. And if you have this kind of a detachment, so this is a rather questionable equation, I would say. So how I see that we can get out of this. So you should be very aware. It's about a little bit, we don't talk here about the self-regulation within the sector, which is a very important thing. So we should, as we mentioned, we should know who are the organization which have the technical capacities to sit and discuss this issue. Somebody mentioned this in the prior, but we also should know who are the organization who can get out 10,000 people if the policy development process do not go very well. So this is a matter of self-regulation, know our position in the scene, and then coordinate, network, and then scale this up on the regional level. So I can imagine how this would like if, for example, 10 competent CSOs would argue for something, and then 2 million people from the Western Balkans came out to say we wanted this. You know, this just a little bit of food of thought to add to this. I really don't have any question, just felt that I need to stress this. Thank you.
Any more questions, perhaps? It would be great.
Excuse me, there was still the question of the evaluation.
I missed it, sorry.
That I have not answered yet, but I would just say briefly a few points on this, because this is a very critical question, and I don't want to omit it on purpose, but this is, of course, always the most difficult thing to say. What kind of impact did you have? And I know it myself for our organization, if we have to write our reports, and you know it too. And I would rather see it in 2 different areas. So what we try to focus on was talking to former organizers of the Civil Society Forum and trying to find out what did not work very well from their perspective in the past. And many people mentioned, for example, there was not enough follow-up from the past forums. Everything was often very different, especially if you compare the summits to each other. They were organized in different formats, focusing on different issues. So we're trying to work with this, to look what topics have been discussed. And of course, we will build on the results from last year by formulating this year's new recommendations and results. If you look at the very practical level, so how did you reach the decision makers? I would say we had some problems in the online realm. If you looked at some panels, you had officials who would, I would say, escape from the panels. So online, it's pretty easy to say, okay, I have limited time. I can only stay for my own contribution, and then I will just leave. So this is like it's a no impact panel, and you could have skipped this in a way. But this won't happen in the live session, obviously. So this is an advantage now. But at least to have the chance to have this impact, the people have to be present, and we can look at this from this perspective, whether this works out or not. Another indicator might be that last year we had some interest in these post-summit talks, and for this year we were approached by some different actors who would say, okay, we heard that there was these kinds of talks last year, maybe we can be part of this. So this seems to be that it's somehow evolving and could generate more interest this year. I would say it should also happen at a broader level, so not only include German ministries, but also other actors in EU countries involved, and ideally also in the region involved. And in the end, this should be something, if we have a different Berlin Process Summit next year and Civil Society Forum, I hope we can transfer somehow to new partners and new people who take over from us, so we can have, again, a follow-up on this. And then we should definitely also look at this, the highest level, which is the impact. And I don't know if we can go to a point where we can say, okay, this was actually decided, like the roaming, a very concrete outcome of this, which everybody has handily as an example. But yeah, I would answer it in this way.
Thanks, Christian. You would like to? Yes, please. Wait for the mic. Yeah.
Since I am part of the civil society in Kosovo, so I wanted to ask our colleague from Belgrade, if I was not mistaken, yeah, the results of the survey that you did, like was Kosovo also included? Do the results count also? Yeah, okay, because it was very sad actually to hear that the trust is so low in civil society. I mean, because I myself cannot consider how like a democracy can function without, if a civil society would not be present in the Western Balkans or anywhere in the world. I mean, although we are maybe pessimistic about inclusion at the local level and all of that.
Perhaps I was not clear enough. So it's a lack of trust that civil society can change something. Not that the civil society is important, not important, relevant.
But this is the aim.
That's the. But if it makes you comfortable, for example, the same research shows that 3 out of 10 believe that local municipality can solve their problems. So the civil society do not stand that bad in this constellation, you know. So.
No, it's actually the data, the evidence helps us to reflect. So that's why I said it is very sad actually to learn, and maybe we need also to reflect the civil society and to think how can this trust be built, how can the perception
absolutely
change?
It's for example by speaking in a very simple terms, you know, we are talking, so imagine how would you communicate the interconnection or the transfer policy or the urban development to ordinary citizens, and what are the benefits for him? I think there is also the question, it's a kind of an elephant in the room. Is the civil society really capable of communicating all this stuff to our citizens to gain back the support? That's important. So,
I find this a fascinating example of a Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. You know, the biggest civil society organization in the world is the American Rifle Organization. And it's impacting and influencing immensely American politics, as you know. So I don't think that we should a priori think that civil society organizations are a prerequisite of democracy or even essential for democracy. They are part of the processes, but the outcomes can be very, very different. And we see also the existence of NGOs which are meant to produce political outcomes which are certainly different from what you would and we would mostly like to see in terms of democracy promotion and so on. So cum grano salis, don't think that everyone who is called civil society organization is a goodie, not at all. But we are talking about impact. And we heard about 2 possible forms of impacts up to now. One is, and Christian went into it, how you influence policies determined by governmental institutions or intergovernmental institutions like the RCC. The other one was, how do we change things on the ground? And this morning we had a beautiful example from the gentleman describing the ecological things. But they could change things because they had the masses, the people following them. Yeah, they had movement. money belongs also to this. You can't make politics. You know, Stalin robbed banks to create the Russian Revolution. So it never happens without money. My question to Diana exactly is, are you planning into your distribution of 17 million, which still fascinates me very much. Are you planning how to measure the impact of what's going to happen, both in terms of getting the people and changing politics?
Yeah, thank you for that question. But I also want to comment this relationship between Belgrade and Pristina. Actually, I'm from a civil society organization, and we share the same issues, the same problems. Actually, the fundamental challenge among civil society organization is how to balancing between running for the projects, implementing some really valuable activities towards policy changing or whatever we are doing, and also how to support solidarity between civil society organizations. Sometimes we are not even friends in a civil society sector, and that's the reason why we don't have a huge impact on a government or on an international community. But your question was about measuring impact, and that's really important in this project because we would like to measure current situation, and we are trying to involve civil society organization in that process from the very beginning. We organize a lot of meetings with civil society organization talking about in all 6 countries, and we are using the same methodology in all 6 countries. We are trying to catch main points when we can measure impact, because it's really demanding how to measure impact. And also we developed one methodology. It's actually in the last phase of the development. We would like to scan the current situation. We will support civil society organization, not just with the funds, with the grants. We will support them with the technical support, with some consultation, mentoring process, etc. And after 1 year, we will measure first impact. After 2 years, we will measure impact on individual level or level of organization, on a level of work, but also on a national level and on the regional level. That is really a completely new methodology created by civil society organization from Western Balkans. And I'm not sure it will be useful, it will functioning, but at least we will try to have evidence-based approach to the grant distribution, because now we have an elitistic approach to civil society organization and funds. And I know that my organization is also in that pool of civil society organizations. Some donors actually have funds just for a huge civil society organization. Somehow the smallest one or a movement have a greater impact on a society. So we need to measure that and also to appreciate that with the support and also with the grants.
I just was told that during the time that I was not here, it was the best part of the whole Tirana Connectivity Forum.
It's not linked with you.
Milica, I have to go. Thank you very much for.
I just wanted to apologize. Unfortunately, my flight was moved and I have to leave. I was supposed to leave later. So thank you for your attention. And I hope you will read the report we have done for the European Parliament.
Thank you. So we are. So we are reaching the end of our second day. Afterwards, we will have the Plat de Résistance with the special envoys. They are all here, except the Austrian one who will be with us online. But before we close, we'll have a last round of any remaining question or remark. And afterwards, we will close with a final statement from our panelists. So I know that Frank wants to have something to say. Another person? Anybody else?
Thanks. since I noticed that there is a kind of interest on my first input, exactly when you were outside. A clear question, because I know the measurement, the tools for measurement of success the donors have with the partners. So measurements are made more or less, or are based on paper. So when we have a good study, then we were successful. When we have something like 5 seminars or 6 trainings, we were successful. So we don't have a measurement for movement. My question, you mentioned it. You mentioned it that you are working on that, and I really like that. So the point is, the question is, could you take some of the 17 million for an organization like Friday for Future and help them to organize, might be regional activities? Is it possible, or is it not possible because of the measurement toolbox the donors have?
We have actually a completely open framework. So I use this opportunity to invite all civil society organizations to apply with own ideas. That is the beauty of this project. We don't have a specific outputs, expected outputs from the civil society organization. All civil society organizations can suggest whatever they want in terms of security, stability, and good governance. And actually, everything we are doing in the ground, it can somehow fit in those two main areas. So my answer is yes, you can suggest something like that. And also, I would like to say that we will not measure impact of the activities. We're not activity-based project. We would rather like to see a real impact in a community. We will talk with the beneficiaries. We will talk with the local civil society organization, media, citizens, and trying to understand change on a local level, change on a personal life of people in that community.
And I can offer you your first community that can be target of your action. For example, is sitting here in front of you. You know, the community of civil society and think tanks that want to have an impact in policy making. Aren't we? So, guys, you know, we have been all extraordinary, tremendous, being here since yesterday in Durrës. So I think there is time for a closing statement from our panelists, and start with Pranvera, with Christian, and with Diana. And afterwards, you will be free for 2 hours. It rains outside, by the way, before the special Envoys event.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very short because I understand that it has been 2 long days. I'd like to conclude saying that I see the merits and the necessity to have the civil society more involved in the process related to the common regional market. But we have to make sure altogether that we have meaningful representation of the civil society into the processes. We have a structured contribution, preferably through specialized expertise and specialized topics where the civil society can contribute, and establishing altogether an instrument or a process through which we could communicate results and learn from each other what did not work well and could be improved.
Thank you, Christian.
Yes, thank you very much. I already had my intermediate summary, so I'm not going to say all this again. I basically added to my list this idea of evaluation of impact and how to see what really comes out of the process. And I must say that after hearing so many examples, I would also find it interesting creating a list somehow of what civil societies can actually achieve, because we've heard a lot of formulations like going beyond being a watchdog. This is an obvious role, making recommendations, being capacity, but often it's also like the result is that you stop something, or that you make transparent that something is not working, that the government is claiming that is working or happening. And this is really fascinating. And there are very many avenues where a very important contribution can be made, even though the impact or the actual result is very different. So I would just not really conclude, but remain open to further suggestions. I hope that we can still continue bilateral conversations later. And yeah, hope to see you all at the Civil Society Forum.
Thank you, Christian. Diana.
For me, it's really important to emphasize that civil societies are dominantly by a small elite group of civil society organizations with the capacities. And this project is opportunity to change that and to offer opportunity to small civil society organizations, but also to the citizens to be heard by civil society organization and by government and the international community through the civil society organization. And we need to use all opportunities to work together and to be more professional, and also to have solidarity as a main value of work in civil society sector in Western Balkans.
Well, thank you. I couldn't have closed it better. So with that, we finished this session 15 minutes before, but I think we've earned it. There is coffee outside, if I'm not wrong, Ingrid? There is coffee outside? Refreshment? No? Later on. At 7 o'clock, we are here in the same room. We will have 4 special envoys, member states special envoys, the first time that they are all together sitting in front of us. Mr. Edic Dusan will be the chair. So if you have whatever you want to convey, talk to the wise man, and he will be our voice with with the special envoys. Thank you very, very much for your time, and see you in a bit.